Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another video. You know, this past Tuesday, my newest book, Manga Art, hit the stores, and out of all of the illustrations in this book, one of them was especially well received. It was this one, my tribute to the inking and coloring style of Calvin and Hobbes. And what I thought I would do today is to show you my approach to imitating that style. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so what I've got here is a drawing of Calvin and Hobbes. This video is really not about how to draw these two characters. Let me know if you'd like me to do a video like that. I thought I would focus instead really on the technique of watercolor and ink. And I can't say for a fact that Bill Watterson, who is of course the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, I can't say for a fact that he does this in the order that I do, which is watercolor first. But I can tell you why I'm choosing to do watercolor first, and that is that the blackness of the ink is for me an important aspect of this illustration, and I don't want, you know, if I put the ink down first and then put the watercolor on top, I'm a little bit afraid that, especially with some of these more opaque colors, that they would mute the blackness or sort of interfere with the blackness of the inking. So that's why I'm doing watercolor first. Those of you who've seen my videos before, you've seen me do this kind of thing where I start with the color and add the inking later. Now when we get down to this grassy area that I've added in, that is where I'm going to try to do some somewhat fancy watercoloring. For now though, I really am just sort of getting the basics of an orange shade for Hobbes's fur into place. I should say that this pose is not of my invention. I found a really wonderful illustration, presumably by Bill Watterson himself, and adapted it for use in this video. And for those of you who want to learn various techniques, I would strongly advise you to consider the approach of doing studies like this, which is to say careful copies of the artist's work so as to unlock the secrets of how they do it. You know, it's one thing to just look at the illustration. When you try to replicate it, that really helps you to understand how it was done. And, you know, easier said than done. It takes years maybe of practice to begin to interpret the difference between lines that were done very slowly and carefully versus lines that were done quite quickly. We're going to talk more about that when we get to the inking stage later on. But I'm going to go in here. This will maybe be the last of this. I'll do all of the orange of Hobbes real time, and I'll probably move on to doing the rest of the colors, especially for these figures, all in time-lapse. I do want to do the grass, though, a little more in real time, because like I said, I'm going to try to do some of the fancier watercolor that I see in Bill Watterson's illustrations, who really was and presumably still is a master of both watercolor and ink, and also comedic storytelling. What gives? How can one guy have become a master in so many things? It's not fair. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and kick it into time-lapse to add color to the rest of the figures, and then we'll come back and do some more real-time for adding color to the grass. Okay, so it's time to get to work on the grass, and what I'm doing here is, I believe, called wet on wet, where you mix up, in this case, a lot of greens, maybe a bit of yellow, and you keep a lot of water in them so that it's going to take quite a long time for them to dry. You're sort of on purpose putting it in there in you know, a super liquid form, which I would not normally do. But hopefully what it'll allow me to do is to begin having different colors kind of bleed into one another. And I'm not, you know, an expert in this. I don't do it that much. But as I understand it, you're kind of trying to get to this perfect zone where it's beginning to dry out maybe just a touch. I'm going to go in here with a yellow, a very yellowy green that's quite liquid, and let's see what happens let's discover together whether this works or doesn't. You can see the two sort of deliberately starting to kind of blend together. I'm going to go actually now into like a third type of a green, still sort of allowing it to stay very liquidy and hopefully begin to create some interesting effects as it dries. I'm going to go back to that first darker kind of olive green that I was working with. Trying to be quite spontaneous here, because when I look at Bill Watterson's work, it has this very lively, off-the-cuff kind of feeling that's really wonderful. Very different in a way from my own work, which very often looks very carefully, sort of uptight and trying to, make sure everything's just perfect. Actually, on the fly, I'm going to go for a little bit of a bluish tint here, see what that does for me way over on the one side. Having it lean a little towards blue-green. And really with this approach, you've got to be patient and let it dry before you do much of anything else. I'm going to see if there's anywhere else along here. What if I dip? I'll try to toss in a little bit of the blue over here at the beginning and see what that does. It's also sort of interesting, there's almost a time delay aspect to working this way, because you're not seeing it. Well, the first thing that you put down is not the final thing that you end up seeing. And like over here, there's a kind of a grainy, and here too, you can see a little bit of a grainy thing emerging that maybe a more practiced watercolorist than I would have been able to predict. Because I don't do this too much, it's very sort of like, well, let's see what happens, and it's kind of fun that way to release control and kind of leave it to the material to decide what it wants to do. And I suspect that a lot of watercolorists, that's one of the things that they love about watercolor, is that loose, slightly unpredictable aspect to it. Already I'm getting kind of uptight here, though. Do you see that? Slowing down, trying really hard to make it work. But yeah, I thought that would be one of the fun things about this video, is to see this grass part, see what happens as it dries. And again, my apologies that I am not more practiced in watercolor. Maybe I can do more such videos in the future and get a little better at it, frankly. I never had a watercolor teacher. This is all, I hesitate to even say self-taught. That sounds as if I was sitting down and teaching myself. No, just experiment is like I wanted to see if I could do it, and I think that's the way it works for a lot of us. It's like, I can't wait around for someone to teach me. I'm just going to start playing around, see what happens, see if I can figure it out. It's not a bad way to, overcome your fear of any type of a medium. Don't assume that there is a way, right? Maybe there is no one way. Maybe the way that you figure out will be a new way that's beautiful. And I think before I kill the spontaneity too much, I should probably stop. I'll do one more, though, because I talked about how this trying to reach a certain zone of dryness, and I'm leaning down to look at the paper here. I'm going to try as an experiment dropping in a bit here, see what happens. And then over here also, not completely dry, I'm going to drop in some and see if it does. Sometimes watercolor can do really beautiful, funky stuff when it starts spreading one thing into another. And if I'm really lucky, that will happen today. If I'm not, it won't. Sometimes the stuff that you do on your little test paper is more beautiful than what you end up putting into the drawing. Darn it! Can I tape the test paper into here and make it look okay? All right, so what I'm going to do now, really, is get lazy and take a break and wait for this to dry, because you definitely need to wait for it to dry before you do anything else. So hang on. I am going to watch paint dry, and then I will be back with the inking. All right, so it's all dried, and you can see that indeed what I was trying to do seems to have worked out at least a little bit. Where you get to that point where it's like real close to being dried, you drop in a real wet piece of color on top of it, and as it dries, it does really interesting, beautiful stuff. So, hey, I got lucky. It actually worked. Now, I'm bringing out this black India ink. It's Higgins is the name of the company, but as you know, I never tell people, hey, make sure you buy the exact same thing that I bought. Any decent ink that you buy at a art store should do the job. And I'm using a fine-tipped brush here, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and start trying to add ink. And hopefully we will see the benefit of my approach of having waited to do the inking last, and we'll get some nice bold blacks here. And, you know, with inking, so much of it has to do with the speed of the stroke. And as I look at Watterson's technique, it seems to me a mix of the occasional super fast inking line, but then other ones that are a little more moderately, you know, I think he's not trying to do this really slick, beautiful, perfect inking that some people do. Let's see if I can do this. I'm dipping back in to the bottle of ink right now to get my ultimate black. And as I do this line across the arm here, watch how I'm doing this. I'm not trying to do like super perfect line work here. I'm almost deliberately having it sort of get a little bit jagged. And that's me sort of studying Watterson's technique as he inked Hobbes. Some of the lines may be a little faster, but then other lines just allowing you to see the humanity of an imperfect line. And in a lot of ways, I keep thinking using a brush to color and especially to ink, it sort of just forces you to loosen up, right? You know, when you have a pen and you push it down on the paper, it holds real steady, and over time you can develop control, real precise control. Whereas when you push down on the tip of a brush, it will spread out all over the place. So you have to kind of give up on this pressing down approach and instead, you know, let up, get a little looser, embrace the random things that occur. It's almost like a philosophy, I believe. And if you feel that you're a little uptight as an artist, a little bit, you know, needing to loosen up, try inking with a brush. It'll kind of force you to loosen up. And I'm enjoying this. You know, it's a different feeling from what I normally do. And makes me think I should try inking with the brush more often. Remember, I did a video not too long ago that was comparing different ways of inking, and people really did respond favorably to the brush and ink one. I would say that was kind of the winner in terms of comments that people left. Now this is where I have to get a little careful. I'm going to do the nose first because it involves somewhat thick lines, but when I get to the eyes and the mouth, I am going to have to use some strategies for getting a delicate, thin line. And for me, what that means is maybe going just a little more vertical. There's a certain loss of control here as I go a little more vertical with the brush, and I'm trying to get just the very tip and very little of the side touching the paper, and this will allow me, there we go, to get at least a little more of a thin line going on there. You can see me sort of doing my best there to get some precision. It ain't easy, let me tell you. And going in here, getting the stripes. Now it's a relief when you know the line's just going to be really thick. You don't have to get quite so like, oh my goodness, am I going to blow it as I draw the eyes, or as I ink these lines? And, you know, I think if I just keep blathering on like this, some people will be like, oh, dude, enough with the talking already. So it may be time for me to bring in Old Man Time-Lapse once again to rescue me from my own boring blather. I'm going to go ahead and finish up inking all of the lines here, and then we'll be back with a few final words. Alright, well there's my video on making a Calvin and Hobbes illustration, specifically the watercoloring and inking techniques. Let me know what you thought about it. I'd love to do more such videos in the future. But for now, let me go ahead and say thank you to anyone who's picked up my books like Brody's Ghost, The Drawing Lesson, The Realism Challenge, and Mastering Manga 3. Of course, my very latest book you saw at the beginning of the video, Manga Art. I really am super, super grateful to anyone who helps me out by picking up any of those books. But let's go ahead and lay down this brush. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back with another one real soon.